stock markets. Stock markets 2018 January 25, 2018 12:49 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time by Raul I_Meyer. This is an article written by Dr. D, who last month wrote a series at the Automatic Earth entitled Bitcoin Doesn't Exist. It shouldn't surprise you that Bitcoin plays a cameo in his modest but actually quite grand plan as well. Dr. D, with all the talk about the bubble market, people are once again saying Donald Trump is a fool. He should never have taken credit for a DAO that's about to collapse. In addition, how does he think he can get away with claiming we have a great economy made greater? He said in the election the economy was terrible and the DAO was a bubble, that's why he won. But hold on, you have to remember, they're politicians, they may be dishonest but they're not stupid. Let's try a scenario to see what they're thinking. We have a situation in the US where 100 million people are out of the workforce, the real economy is on life support, debt is crushing, and monetary velocity is at an all-time low. The Fed's every effort at market rigging, lowering rates, and pumping in money, bailing out the banks and giving unearned interest for Fed deposits have run up both the housing market and the stock market, neither of which is the legal mandate. If either one goes higher, they'll pop as workers, particularly millennials, have no income to buy houses, and stocks are levitating on just 5 insider-paid FAANG stocks. It's untenable. However, if either falls, the collateral that upholds the whole system will fail, margins will be called, the housing market will fall, and there will be an instant depression. You know, more than the 100 million out-of-work depression we already have. A depression that makes congressmen and government workers lose their profits and 401ks instead of just turning students to open prostitution, a mass opioid death, and starving people in Oklahoma, you know, a depression that finally hurts someone who matters. Since this is self-evident and unsustainable, isn't Trump just stepping in it by pushing all the same policies as Obama? Not necessarily. Look at what matters to him. A tax plan, and barely, not one he liked, but look at what he settled for, return of foreign profits abroad. Why? Large as it is, and it's already creating long withheld bonuses, that's not enough to turn the dial. But that's a card he wanted. Tax policy and a high stock market. What else? Well, we have a crippling high debt, easily 100%, even 200% of GDP. With that weight, nothing can move, no way to win. Pensions also are nearly dead, along with insurance companies. The high DAO is all that's saving them from bankruptcy. What else? Well, he was interested in health reform but was willing to let it remain for now. He wrote deferrals but not pardons for 5 banks, showing he'd like to keep them functioning for the moment. He wanted to increase the military. Certainly the only other promise was to create jobs and economies again, in a way saying the few protected industries, finance, healthcare, and military would have to become a smaller percent of GDP, so those dollars could be returned back to Main Street. But we just said those 3 aren't happening. So, what if instead of pulling money from intractable lobbying groups he got new investment money from abroad? We saw this initially with Carrier and Ford and more recently with Japan. But it's not enough and he knows all this they'll do. How do you solve the problem? How do you get more? Calling all first-year econ students, how do you attract capital to your country? With higher rates. If the US 10-year breaks out above 2.6%, you'd have to think that's attractive. Attractive investing in a bankrupt nation that's barely moving. It does if you're a company that must maintain legal investment ratios and you're getting 0% in Japan, and negative rates in Europe, both with economies as bad or worse. But aren't rising rates bad? The Fed model raises rates to clamp down on the economy. Money will leave the stock market and go to bonds. Housing prices will fall as the monthly cost increases. Cats and dogs living together, except it isn't true. Let's go down the list. 1. Trump starts with plausible seed corn, a billboard sign, a tax cut and a few trillion overseas to start economic motion. 2. If the Fed raises rates that will draw in trillions of world capital, Trump wants enough to turn the dial and really matter. 3. Enough money flowing into the US will create demand for the US dollar, and the US dollar will rise. This part has to work. Be flashy, attract attention. Go big or go home. 4. The US dollar rising will attract foreign buyers into US investment and together the stock market will counterintuitively rise. 5. The Fed will detect overheating and raise rates again and again in a reinforcing cycle, drawing capital to only the US and suffocating the world. 6. The massive investment reindustrializes the U.S. to some extent, while the high U.S. dollar gives some relief to Main Street. 7. Foreign buying, better jobs, and low exchange rates hold off the housing collapse, while all the mortgage bonds are also sold overseas. 8. Emerging markets are hammered by the high U.S. dollar and fail, driving ever more capital to safe havens like the U.S. 9. Ultimately, the U.S. does what all reserve currencies do and fails last. See why they think they can get away with this. The U.S. can still ravage the world, and Trump can, in fact, call it his success. Just like all the presidents since Nixon. But this is history, and it never ends there. 10. The whole world, strangled by the U.S. and its dollar, have no choice but to reject the U.S. system entirely in private contracts and move to an alternative. 11. We now have at least 3 alternatives: the CIPS, yuan banking bloc, gold, and cryptocurrencies. They aren't exclusive. The most likely outcome is a gold-backed trading note priced in yuan on a blockchain, perhaps in the Shanghai exchange. 12. Being entirely too high, the US dollar ultimately cripples the US as well, but the alternative currency the world creates becomes the lifeboat to escape. Let's be simple and say it's Bitcoin. It won't be. Bitcoin hit John McAfee's $1 million. What do you call it when a currency rapidly becomes worth 1/10, 1/100th, 1/1 of the standard? Isn't that hyperinflation? 13. The U.S., like every nation since Adam Smith, defaults on its $20 trillion in dollar debt, and all its internal consumer, corporate, and pension debt, using hyperinflation of the dollar. New twist is that, instead of gold, it hyperinflates versus cryptos or the New World Exchange Standard as planned in 1971 and publicized in 1988. 14. The reset occurs, no one dies, in the US, supply chains are maintained, oil flows, and the economy stops being a feral, diabolical means of theft and control and returns to being a fair, voluntary exchange. For now. That's not to say they'll succeed, but this is why they think they can go this way and win at it. What does the Trump world look like? 1. Stock market rose, like he said. 2. Manufacturing returns, reindustrializing a hollow nation and allowing the country to catch up to the stock prices, like he said. 3. Unemployment drops, like he said. 4. Crime is reduced and the cities are improved, like he said. 5. This helps win the black vote, snatching the rest of the Democratic base and locking them out for years, like Bannon said. 6. Economic growth normalizes the banking, medical oversize, like he wanted. 7. Free, untracked money for bribes and illegal cover end and law and order returns with fair exchange, like he said. 8. The US is unwelcome overseas, and the breaking of bonds resets the multipolar world, where the US is just one trading nation among many, like he said. 9. Without the money of empire the military returns home, like he said. 10. The world is pretty mad at us and that renewed military came in handy. That's okay, they'll be consoled that the economy now works and the US can no longer start wars and act terribly. What does the world look like after? A lot more like it was before 1945. You know, back when we were great and before we got terrible. Again, not to say this will happen, but you can see that it can happen, and they are now in control of most of the levers required. Their rhetoric, you can see the glass darkly that this is what they find a priority, a possibility, and therefore a doorway out. In addition, downsizing and re-establishing honesty will not allow their opponents to wiggle out and reverse it. Why wasn't this done before? My guess is that previous planners thought with a little more effort they could take over the world, as seen in the Arab Spring plan that would culminate in the capture of Iran, the only remaining oil fields on the planet, and given the world's first entirely fiat financial system, it was too complex and disruptive to return to a gold standard. Without a lightning fast crypto base, banking and trade would fail and millions would die. Only when the one was burned out and the other made available could this move be attempted. Watch and see. By Raul G. Meyer. Website, http://theautomatusearth.com, provides unique analysis of economics, finance, politics and social dynamics in the context of complexity theory. Copyright 2018. Copyright Raul Meyer. All rights reserved. Disclaimer: the above is a matter of opinion provided for general information purposes only and is not intended as investment advice. Information and analysis above are derived from sources and utilizing methods believed to be reliable, but we cannot accept responsibility for any losses you may incur as a result of this analysis. Individuals should consult with their personal financial advisors. Raul Ilagi Meyer Archive Copyright 2005 to 2018 http://www.marketoracle.co.uk. The Market Oracle is a free daily financial markets analysis. Only logged in users are allowed to post comments. Register, log in.